Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, Dalton, Wasserman here with you guys. We're all companied up. We're matching in our PFF t-shirts because this is the PFF Award Show episode for the 2024 season. I know we're releasing it technically in 2025, but it is for the 2024 regular season. Dalton, we're going to have a lot of fun on this show. I'm really excited for this. This is a culmination of everything that we watch this year. You and I have done so many review shows. We've talked about so many different players. And today, we get to recognize some of the best. Offensive and defensive rookie of the year. You'll see, of course, MVP. But then we'll get into some more, PFF-centric stuff beyond just the common stats. We'll go into exactly best run blocker, best pass blocker, best passer specifically, best pass rusher, things like that, right? Then, of course, we'll cap things off by giving you guys the Dwight Stevenson Award, which is a PFF, I should say centric, but it's a PFF unique award is probably the better way to say it, where we recognize the best player in the NFL this year, independent of all of that debate of MVP and the words exactly. We'll give out the MVP award, but the Dwight Stevenson is truly who we think was the best player in football this season. Dalton, we got a lot of awards to get to, a lot of great recognition coming on this show. How you doing, my friend?
Fantastic. Look, I love this type of show because, so often the talk is, on the awards circuit in a traditional sense about quarterbacks and MVP and maybe offensive and defensive rookie of the year, but I think you really get into the nitty-gritty of all 22 spots on the field. We even have a special teams player of the year, right?
Amen,
so
we do.
I just think to appreciate guys like offensive linemen and coverage defenders and breakout players and special teams and everything like that, to understand how much goes into winning one football game at a time at all 22 spots on the field currently and all 53 spots on your roster. I think that's something really we can appreciate in a show like this.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a blast. I'm very excited about this one. I'm excited to have everybody in the chat as well as we kind of get to reveal a lot of these awards here over the next hour, however long this takes us. We talk a lot, so maybe it'll be a little bit over an hour. We'll see. We will see. If you guys want to see these statistics for yourself, one, you can go over to PFF.com. There's an article written about all of these award winners. They get into the numbers of exactly why they won the award, how these guys stood out, where they ranked against their peers, and to see all of that fully unlocked, you got to get a PFF a PFF Plus subscription, which I was about to say gives you the fully unlocked PFF mock draft simulator, which it actually does. I feel like I've said that so many times over the last couple of weeks as you ramp into draft season. But subscribe.pff.com is the way that you can get yourself a PFF sub to see all of the articles where we go into even more depth of why these players won these certain awards. We're going to start with the rookies. Let's start with the young guns. Defensive and offensive rookie of the year. We're going to start with defensive rookie of the year, and I won't build up the suspense too much. The winner here from us is Jared Verse, the edge rusher from the Los Angeles Rams. Now, full transparency, we are recording this episode after the Rams defeated the Minnesota Vikings in the playoffs, but there's a regular season thing, so as great as Jared Verse looked against the Minnesota Vikings, we didn't take that into account, but Dalton, it felt like that was just an extension of his regular season. So this is somebody who was not the first edge rusher who was picked off of the board, right? He was not the first pass rusher that was selected in this past draft. But holy cow, he looked like the best one. He looked unstoppable as a rookie, specifically winning with power, which you almost never see rookie pass rushers win in that way. Because normally when you get to the NFL, these offensive tackles, they're bigger, they're faster, but they're stronger too. So it's hard to win like that right out of the gate. But Jared Verse absolutely did this year.
No, he's a special player already, and you're talking about a guy who wasn't just the best rookie defender. He was the 9th best edge defender in football during the regular season. He had the second most pressures ever by a rookie in a regular season, only behind Nick Bosa in 2019. 6 sacks, also 2 forced fumbles. 19.6% pass rush win rate was the 6th best among qualified edge defenders. And like you mentioned, as if that weren't enough, he was the best player on the field against Minnesota in his first playoff game.
Yep.
88 overall grade, had the touchdown, the scoop and score, 7 pressures, just a ridiculous rookie season, and honestly one that kind of goes in the annals of PFF history up there with the Bosa brothers and Khalil Mack and Myles Garrett and all of the great edge defenders that we've seen come out, especially over the last decade. He's right in that class already. You look at his overall grade this season, right there next to guys like Trey Hendrickson and Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter. I mean, one of the, not just elite rookies, one of the elite edge players in football already, and honestly Les Snead with his entire defense, but especially with going with Verse and then his Florida State teammate Braden Fisk in the second round, how they've immediately rebuilt this defensive line right after the retirement of Aaron Donald. It starts with Verse because he's the best player, but they have a great crew there, and it's going to be a really scary defensive line led by him for a long time.
No, there's no question the Rams you lose a guy like Aaron Donald and you go, what are we going to do now? And they've, taken the Moneyball line of we can't replace him, but we can build him in the aggregate, right? I mean, I didn't think they were going to be able to do it this quickly, but certainly a guy like Jared Verse absolutely helps. There's a lot of other defensive rookies that played well this year and got a lot of significant playing time. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, from the Philadelphia Eagles. Mike Sainer still was able to play a ton. He actually played the most defensive snaps of any rookie this season. Kalen Bullock and what he was able to do at safety for the Houston Texans. Kamari Laster as well. We saw in the playoff game that he was standing out in a major way. Tavondre Sweat was able to get some good playing time and play pretty well this season. Nate Wiggins has flashed for the Baltimore Ravens. So a lot of really good rookie performances, but when you look at Jared Verse, among defensive rookies, first in overall PFF grade, first in pass rush grade, first in run defense grade, and first in pressures. Anytime you sweep like that, you're going to win the award. So shout out to Jared Verse for winning PFF's Defensive Rookie of the Year. Now we go over to Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now we will crown a straight-up Rookie of the Year, so it'll be the offense and the defensive players going up against each other. We'll save that for next after we intro Offensive Rookie of the Year, which is Washington Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels. And it feels like it kind of has to be, right? His 94.9 PFF passing grade on targets between 10 to 19 yards ranks second among all quarterbacks. And this is an area where, man, when you looked at Jayden Daniels and you said, okay, he does a lot of really great things at LSU, there were some things that were, I don't want to say totally absent from his game, but just weren't his strengths. Throwing over the middle in that regard was something that he just wasn't asked to do a lot when he was at LSU. And he absolutely took his game to the next level. And I think that's why he feels like that guy who had to win this award for us, because of how well he was able to take that next step. Again, just like Jared Verse was. You rarely get better as a rookie in the NFL, taking that step to becoming a pro. Jayden Daniels got better this year at the hardest position to play. And we'll get into kind of his competition and some guys that he won this award over. But your thoughts, Jayden Daniels, your boy, QB1, with him winning this award.
Everything he was at LSU, he was for Washington this year. And I think as much as obviously just a great player as he is, right? He was second behind Lamar Jackson in explosive runs among quarterbacks. He was deadly accurate. He was cool under pressure. I think the value that he brought to that specific team, we have to remember through all of this, the Commanders were the second worst team in football last year. Their defense still is not great. Their offensive line is not great. Terry McLaurin's their only really legitimate weapon that is going to be there long term. And yet he found a way to put up the fifth highest overall grade among all quarterbacks this season in the regular season. As valuable to his team as any player in the NFL. And I know one of, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen will win the MVP, but I don't think there's a more important player to his team than Jayden Daniels. And you saw that again in the playoff game against Tampa Bay, as we extend this into the playoffs with him too, where you go, he just has put this team on his back, especially down the stretch. His offensive line struggling as the season goes on, and it just seems to be less and less options for him to work with, and yet he keeps playing better. And just like he did at LSU, just can carry you through everything. A special player already, at least this season, a top 8 quarterback in the league. And I just think you cannot, between his talent and even what he adds schematically to Cliff Kingsbury's offense with his feet and everything's centered around him. And yet he continues to carry them to wins. It's just an incredible year he's had. One of, if not the best rookie season by a quarterback we've seen in the PFF era. I believe second to Russell Wilson in overall grade in his spectacular 2012 season. Just you almost run out of things to say about him, right? And then there's all the big moments, right? The Hail Mary against the Bears, the game-winning drive against the Eagles, the game-winning drive against the Bucs in the playoffs. I mean, he just keeps stepping up when it matters most, and he's as valuable to his team as any player in football.
Just like defensive side of the football, a lot of really fun rookies this year who were able to stand out and get a lot of great playing time. Bo Nix is one of them who I thought was able to play really well above expectations. It felt like Dominic Cooney was great, dominant at times for the San Francisco 49ers. I think the same with Zach Frazier, shouting him out as the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was fantastic this season. If we're staying along that same position, Graham Barton played well. I know didn't have the best playoff game, but he played really well this season, and he's going to be a mainstay for them moving forward. Joe Alt was great. Malik Neighbors was great. Like so many of these rookies, I think, were able to stand out in big ways. Brock Bowers is the one that I think people would look at and say, all right, this was the debate. And this was absolutely a debate between those two players because Brock Bowers, he in his rookie season recorded an 85.1 overall PFF grade, third highest mark at the position this season, the highest grade for a rookie tight end that we have had since Jordan Reed, Gator grade, in 2013. Broke the record for most receiving yards for a rookie tight end and the most receptions for a rookie tight end, rookie, I believe, receiver, just overall. So Bauer's year was historic. It was phenomenal. And I think that's the debate. It was between those two guys for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Ultimately, we gave it to Jaden Daniels because of what you had mentioned. And overall, Rookie of the Year, we are also giving to Jaden Daniels, just because of sort of what you said there. The moments, I think, really stand out beyond even just the grades, the magnitude of him being able to step up in the ways that he did, not only for Washington to make the playoffs, but make a statement in the playoffs, right? I know that doesn't go into exactly the voting, but it's again, an extension of like, hey, I think we made the right decision here, picking this guy. 89.6 overall PFF grade, highest mark for a rookie quarterback, and the second highest that we've ever given since Russell Wilson, who earned a 90.6 back in 2012. So Jaden not only gets Offensive Rookie of the Year, he gets our overall Rookie of the Year. You got to feel good about that.
I mean, absolutely, right? QB1, huh? But I mean, no, it's you're just talking about this is the dream that you want for a kid in his rookie season, right? If you're especially a new regime, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters taking over in Washington, had to nail this draft class, had to nail which quarterback. They really had the choice between Jaden Daniels and Drake May, and Drake's going to be a good player. We saw flashes out of him too, but Jaden, just a special level. And one other guy I didn't hear you mention there was Bucky Irving.
Oh, yes.
Irving's actually the
How
only.
could I not?
He's actually the only offensive rookie that graded higher than Daniels. But Daniels played twice as many snaps and obviously playing quarterback and doing all the things that he did to carry this team to the playoffs. So Bucky Irving I want to shout out too because he was just spectacular, one of the best backs in football this year. But Jaden, yeah, just you could not ask any more of a rookie quarterback than they did out of Jaden this year. And He managed to carry him. Obviously missed the better part of 2 games he missed? Or no, he only missed the 1 game with the rib injury, and then he came back. That was the thing, too, is came back, was kind of hobbled with the rib injury in the middle of the year, lost a few games to some teams that were better than them, right? At Pittsburgh and at the time, I should say, Baltimore, Philadelphia. There were flaws on this team, and he managed to mask all of them, and he continues to do so. And it does remind you a lot of Russell Wilson in that rookie year, because I believe Wilson won 1 playoff game in his rookie year as well, and then darn near won a second one the next week. So, for as much, and Dan Campbell said this in his presser, his first presser this week, he's like, look, this kid is dangerous. Don't even look at him. Don't even look at him like a rookie, because he doesn't play the position like a rookie. And the last number I have, second best turnover-worthy play rate in football. And I think it starts there, is protecting the football at such a young age, and something he did really well his entire career, really, at Arizona State and at LSU.
That last year specifically, those last 2 years at LSU specifically, he had one of the lowest turnover-worthy play rates in the country, and that is, going back to sort of like my draft evaluation. I was a little bit worried about Jaden just because it's like, man, everything looked so easy for him at LSU. You almost get, it is one of those things where you go like, all right, I like that it looks easy. Does it look too easy? Is this now replicable? Do you think that you could having a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors on your football team, you go like, is he going to be able to look the same at the NFL level? He is. He's the same guy, if not an even better version, which is why you crown him with this Rookie of the Year. Shame on me for not mentioning Tampa Bay Buccaneer Bucky Irving. Maybe I thought to myself, hey, he already looks like a vet, so I didn't even think about him in a rookie. That's the excuse.
He's another one. That is true.
I would
argue he's already the second or third best player on their offense. He's just incredible.
Next award is Comeback Player of the Year. Now, here at PFF, we actually want this to mean like Comeback Player of the Year. Like, you don't just come back from being bad. Sometimes it feels like the actual NFL award for Comeback Player of the Year is like, oh, it could go to a guy who was fully healthy the year before. He just sucked. And
is that a different one? Is that the Bounce Back Player of the Year? Do we have to make another new one?
Do we have Bounce Back, Break? I know we have Breakout Player of the Year, so I think that one kind of.
But I feel like Breakout's a guy who was never on that level. Like Breakout's like a new guy.
Do we have because Breakout's coming up next. I don't think we have Bounce Back Player of the Year.
That might be one for next year.
Might need to create one next year. But our Comeback Player of the Year is Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow, who at the beginning of the season during training camp, he had a calf strain, so he wasn't really healthy going into last season, but the injury that he really overcomes is that wrist injury that he suffered in week 11 last year. Ended up having to get surgery on it. That was on his throwing wrist, and he missed the remainder of the season from week 12 on. So he goes through that surgery on his throwing wrist, and this year, not only did he look fully healthy, he was phenomenal. He was one of the best players that we had in the NFL this season. There was a case for him to be MVP given the surrounding that he had with the Cincinnati Bengals and how, all right, early on in the season, yeah, Job was playing well, but they're used to being a little bit more balanced. The defense is playing a little bit better. As the season went on, very clearly it was just like, Joe and Jamar and T, like, please save us. And they ended up having to put their foot on the gas pedal. They came up, I don't want to say like a coin flip, but basically a tie short with one of those teams to get into the playoffs. And Joe Burrow, just the volume stats that he had this year, I know some people might look at that and say like, yeah, okay, well, he led the league in passing and all that kinds of stuff. It's because he was throwing the ball so much because the defense was so bad. Well, he was still the one to deliver them. And certainly down the last month and a half, he was able to reassure us that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So coming back from that injury, especially a throwing hand injury, is a big deal. So Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals wins Comeback Player of the Year for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you mentioned about his surroundings is a big key here. When you talk about the Bengals were 22nd in defensive grade this year, and that's with a little mini surge at the end there. I think there was a long time this season they were sitting in the bottom 5. 27th in rushing grade. We know they don't run the ball real well. 31st in offensive line grade. So he's doing this with the second worst offensive line in football, and he is mobile. He can improvise a little, but not at the level of a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson, right? So, I mean, I think the two things that stand out, getting through a supporting cast that doesn't support him a whole lot outside of Chase and Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, and the speed at which he processes the field is just incredible. I think actually faster than any quarterback in football, even the other elite ones. On throws under 2.5 seconds, 93.2 passing grade, leads the NFL. 14 big-time throws is second, 21 touchdowns is second. He does everything mentally at hyperspeed, in part because he has to. We've seen this with this offensive line for years and years. Even in their Super Bowl run back in 2021, they couldn't block a soul. And he's in the Super Bowl trying to win against Aaron Donald and Von Miller and everything they have going there. It's just amazing how he can process things from the pocket and still excel, even with all the chaos around him.
We'll be stringing together some of these awards if guys have won multiple. And for Joe Burrow, we'll also announce that he won the award for Best Passer this season as well. A lot of what you talked about, how quick he had to be on the trigger when it came to throwing and getting the ball out of his hands before 2.5 seconds. His 75.6 PFF passing grade under pressure was the best in the NFL, as were his 17 big-time throws under pressure. You mentioned some of the statistics of how unreliable the offensive line was in front of him. So not only is Comeback Player of the Year, I think, a worthy award for him to win, but also Best Passer from what we saw here. 92.8 PFF passing grade overall. Barely beat out Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens as best in the league. He also tied Josh Allen with 37 big-time throws, yet he was also tied for the 6th best turnover-worthy play rate at just a 1.9%. So I think a lot of people will look at Joe Burrow and, like I said, just the overall, okay, well, he led the league in passing, he led the league in passing touchdowns, things like that, and you go, well, hold on, it's just, it's these volume stats because the defense was so bad. No. If you look into it a little bit more, the grades, the big-time throw percentages, the turnover-worthy play percentages, his play under pressure, all of that lends itself to him beyond those volume statistics being the best passer in the NFL this year. So Joe Burrow not only wins Comeback Player of the Year, but he also wins Best Passer here.
No matter what you think, he is one of the 4 best quarterbacks in football. It's that simple. It's Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, and Lamar. In some order, you can debate till the end of time what order you feel like putting them in, but those are the 4, and Burrow's solidly in there. Arguably the best pure passer from the pocket in the NFL.
Yep. Our breakout player, so not quite bounce back player, a little bit of a different award here. The breakout player for us goes to Philadelphia Eagles linebacker Zach Bond, who, Zach Bond coming out of Wisconsin, it was like, all right, well, what does he do best? Well, at Wisconsin, he was best as a pass rusher, right? And he gets drafted by the New Orleans Saints, and they go like, all right, we're going to try to play him an off-ball linebacker because he's a little small for a pass rusher. So he's an off-ball linebacker, and then a little bit into his career, they go, all right, well, actually, you're not as impactful as we think you could be, so now we're going to play on the edge a little bit more. And he's impactful a little bit, but it just felt like he was sort of a guy within the box formation there for the New Orleans Saints. And when he went to the Philadelphia Eagles, he is now playing as their true off-ball linebacker next to Kobe Dean. And they've been the best linebacker duo in the NFL. And Zach Bond is a major reason why. Finished this year as the league's highest graded linebacker with a 90.1 PFF grade. From weeks 8 to 10, Bond was the highest graded defender in the NFL. Not just linebacker, defender in the NFL with a 93.7 grade across those 3 games. 91.6 coverage grade, was over 3 points higher than the next closest linebacker, which is 3-time All-Pro Fred Warner. Anytime you're beating Fred Warner in a coverage statistic at the same position, you got to get some recognition there. So Zach Bond, I think he is a major reason why the Philadelphia Eagles defense is playing as stout as it is. Not to take anything away from the rest of a very talented Philadelphia Eagles defense, but when you have this kind of player playing the way that Bond has this season in the middle, it could just do so many things for you. So shout out to Zach Bond, who wins our breakout player of the year.
Yeah, I think you summed it up right, and I think you start with his 4 years with the Saints. He played just under 69% of his snaps off the edge for the Saints, and he was rotating in there. He played a little bit of linebacker, but not enough to get in a rhythm, and he goes to the Eagles where they finally give him that shot at the position. And like you mentioned, the Eagles had the best linebacker core in the league this year. Last year, they were 19th in overall grade for their linebackers. They were rotating guys like Nick Morrow, and Nakobe Dean was still there, but he was still young and coming off an injury. Devin White was filling in snaps. It was a struggle for Philadelphia last year, and I think that's a big thing for me is the value he's brought. The big question, there was a lot of questions. Right now, they're the best defense in football, but there was a lot of questions coming into the year about the Eagles' defense. What do they have at corner? They drafted 2 rookie corners.
Yep.
One of them's playing in the slot. They couldn't defend in the slot last year, and their linebackers were well below average. And that was a big question for us. We thought going in, okay, it's going to be Zach Bond and maybe Nakobe Dean, and this could still be a weakness, and who knows how they look in the middle. And it turned into arguably their biggest strength. So I think Bond, what he's brought, and it's going to be his role is going to be magnified through the playoffs now with Nakobe Dean out for the rest of the season. He's been such a huge part in run defense and coverage of what the Eagles have been able to do and why they're the number 1 defense in football right now.
I think this one probably for a lot of people would have come down to Zach Bond or Sam Darnold, right? I mean, like Sam Darnold was a true breakout candidate, what he was for the Minnesota Vikings. And again, we're recording this episode after the Vikings lost to the Rams, and so it's maybe not as pretty of a picture for Sam Darnold over these last 2 games that he has played against Detroit and then the loss against the Rams. But the whole season, I mean, Sam was a true definition of that breakout player. He was the best version of himself that we had seen all season. But even with that being the case, Zach Bond was elite in so many different areas. And in fact, to give you guys like a PFF-centric type of statistic, Bond finishes the 2nd most valuable linebacker in the league according to PFF's wins above replacement metric, behind only Bobby Wagner. And Bobby Wagner is just, I mean, he is so rock solid. He's so exactly where he needs to be.
He's ageless.
The negative plays from Bobby Wagner are so few and far between that's how you get that is what helps you get such a very high PFF wins above replacement score. Is like, I mean, there's just very few players in the league, if any, who play as reliably as Bobby Wagner does, even at his age. So Sam Darnold, I want to make sure that I shouted him out as well. I think it's definitely a debate between those 2 guys at the top. There were a couple of other on staff. We had some debates. Like some people wanted to throw Brian Thomas Jr. into this mix as a big time breakout player, and like BTJ, like absolutely like a true definition of a breakout player, no doubt. But he's a rookie, so it's a little bit different. He had that category with like offensive rookie of the year, just plain rookie of the year, and I think the spirit of this award is more for a veteran who's been in the league for at least a couple of years and is now playing their best ball. So I think that he's more the true definition.
I think if I was going to throw maybe 1 second-year guy in there, it'd be Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he was underused in his rookie year, and really this year you could argue became the best slot. He was maybe the best slot receiver in football this year. That's maybe a 3rd guy that I would at least think about. But no, Bond, I mean, just an outstanding season and a huge reason the Eagles have gotten where they've gotten so far.
Yeah. Special Teams Player of the Year. You mentioned that we're getting Special Teams Player of the Year. Here's our Special Teams Player of the Year award. It is Dallas Cowboys kicker Brandon Aubrey. The Dallas Cowboys kicker earned a 95.8 field goal grade this past season. This is the highest grade that we have ever seen a kicker earn in the PFF era. So he had to win it here. So shout out to Brandon Aubrey, winner of PFF's Special Teams Player of the Year award.
Look, when you have a guy who made the most kicks between 40 and 49 in the NFL with 14, the most kicks from 50 plus in the NFL with 14, 65-yarder against Baltimore, 60-yarder against the Giants, 2 58-yarders against Tampa. I mean, just he's a weapon, and I think that's what you get when you have the truly elite kickers in football. You think about prime Justin Tucker, you think about Sebastian Janikowski back in the day, right? Like guys like that who can do special things. It really makes the decisions a little bit different when you have a kicker of this caliber and a guy who can put 3 points on the board. Seemingly, it feels like from anywhere. I forget which game it was, but there was a game they lined up and let him try from 70 before halftime.
Did he kick it?
I think it was against Carolina.
I didn't think he kicked it.
No,
did he actually kick it?
It was against.
I know he lined up.
It was against Carolina. They lined up. It was like 70 or 71. He hooked. he hooked it. It was right before halftime, and Mike McCarthy was like, screw it, maybe he can do it. But they let him. He's so good that they let him try from 70, and that in and of itself is impressive. But no, definitely just an absolute weapon for the Cowboys. And I think when you have a guy like that who can change the decision-making process, you can't argue with him being here at this spot as good as he was this year.
No, wait, who was the other guy that you were going to cape for?
Chris Boswell was fantastic
yeah, you're right.
for the Steelers. Yep. I mean, but when you're talking about highest graded kicker ever on field goals in a season, kind of have to go with it. But Chris Boswell, too, I want to shout out for the Steelers, was just incredible this year.
Our coverage defender of the year, best coverage defender, goes to Denver Broncos cornerback Patrick Surtain II, who played so well as a corner that he's even getting Defensive Player of the Year votes, and deservingly slow. I mean, when you just look at the coverage ability for him, career year, 87.4 coverage grade, allowing just 0.53 yards per coverage snap. I mean, he was fantastic. He was targeted 52 times throughout the season. Despite this, he had 4 interceptions, 7.7 interception rate per target, second best mark in the NFL. And the one that I think really encapsulates it is he had the highest wins above average or wins above replacement metric of any defensive player in the NFL this year because of how locked down he was and how much he was able to get his hands on the football for turnovers himself. So best coverage defender, Denver Broncos cornerback Patrick Surtain II.
I mean, just a fantastic player. And I'll tell you what, this award I thought was harder to pick because we had so many great safeties, especially who played great football this year. Xavier McKinney, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch. I mean, even at corner, Derek Stingley kind of making a late charge at this one too. I think this was one of the harder awards to pick. But when you have a guy who, like you mentioned, leads in wins above average, leads all corners in coverage grade, second behind Stingley with a 61.1 passer rating allowed. And you want to know what honestly my favorite stat for Surtain is this year?
Let's hear it.
He went the entire regular season. He did not miss a single tackle.
Whoa. See, again, going back to the floor, I didn't even know that statistic. Going back to sort of raising the floor and how reliable you are when it comes to a wins above replacement metric, avoiding negatives is just as important as going after that ceiling. And for Patrick Surtain to not only be a shutdown corner, but also somebody who's very reliable when the ball carrier is coming his way, that also goes a long way into him earning that score.
You get it. Coaches love corners. That
great shout out.
Defensive backs that can tackle because there's a lot of them that don't want to. We see that every single year. But the fact that he can throw that in there along with all the coverage stuff is incredible. He's again, this was one of the harder awards to pick, but I think settling on Surtain here is a good choice.
Shout out to Trent McDuffie as well, the cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was PFF's advanced coverage grade leader and lockdown rate leader as well. He was second place in positive grades. For the cornerback position, 4th in traditional coverage grade, 6th in coverage grade over expectation. Like he was also locked down. I mean, for as much as we salute Patrick Surtain for an incredible year that he had, Trent McDuffie, in my opinion, was right there. So it was these two guys back to back for the cornerback grade. But shout out to Patrick Surtain, who ends up taking the award here for best coverage defender here at PFF. Now we go to best run defender. Steelers fans, are you paying attention? It's going to TJ Watt, their future Hall of Fame edge rusher. Watt's 91.4 run defense grade through 17 games, ranked second in the league among defenders who had at least 500 snaps, and his 3.2 negatively graded play rate against the run was the lowest of any box defender who had at least 300 snaps. So again, you talk about raising the floor, how good TJ Watt is, right? We've been criticized before of like, we're Steelers and TJ Watt haters. No. Sometimes there are guys that have a little bit higher of a ceiling as a pass rusher than TJ Watt on a play-by-play basis when it comes to getting after the quarterback. Obviously, Watt has had the sacks throughout his career, and we're not taking anything away from him there. But when it comes to who you are as a total edge rusher, TJ Watt is and has long been one of the best in the NFL because not only is he a good pass rusher, but he's also an excellent run defender too. So that's why, I mean, he is up there as one of the best edge defenders every single season. Even if we might not give him best pass rusher of the year, he's always in that conversation for how solid he plays. And as the best run defender, and those numbers that I just mentioned, they speak to that for how good TJ Watt is every year.
Absolutely. You're talking about the only defensive lineman in football with a 90-plus grade in run defense and pass rush. I mean, a balanced football player. He's got the big right hook that can force fumbles in the run game anytime you want. You know, we've seen him in the past even drop into coverages. You know, when you talk about TJ Watt, he's one of the best edge defenders in football. We're not talking one of the 10 or 12 best edges, because usually you kind of generalize it to that. No, he's one of the best 2 or 3. And it's in part because
and it's a damn good group. Like we're in a, I don't want to say like a rare era because there's been great edge rushers before, but to think that every year over the last, let's say, 4 to 5 years, we have talked about Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, like those 4 in particular, and then, you know, if you want to throw like, you know, Max Crosby's been in there some years. He's been at the top within that conversation of those guys. But those 4 guys are like a constant every year for unbelievable play at the edge rush position. And so to say that you are always firmly in that group no matter what is special. It really is.
It's incredible. And I think to mention again about Watt as a run defender, not that there aren't guys, but at this level, like when I talk about a Jared Verse and the value he brings as a pass rusher and a run defender, it's incredible because there's guys who don't quite do that yet. You know, I even think about a Trey Hendrickson who's an elite pass rusher and a decent run defender. When you can bring it on both sides and you can bring it every single snap like TJ can, it makes life so much harder for an offense because you essentially, almost in the same way that when you have a lockdown corner, you can't throw to that side of the field. You basically, when TJ Watt's there, you can't do anything to his side of the field because not only, you know, and I think my favorite part about him, not only does he make great plays and shedding blocks, he gets after the football and he forces turnovers.
Yep.
And I think that's the most dangerous part is anytime you run at number 90, you're in danger of losing the foot, not just getting stopped, losing the football. And I think just that fear that he puts in opposing offenses has to be recognized in the run game as well as a pass rusher.
Yeah, I mean, his teammate Cam Hayward was pretty good at defending the run as well. Harold Landry was really, for the Tennessee Titans, was the only edge rusher who was close to Watt's 3.2 negatively graded play percentages against the run. Harold Landry was the only one who was really close. I mean, it was basically just TJ Watt in that area. So to elevate the floor as much as he does on a play-by-play basis, shout out to TJ Watt, one of the best defenders, one of the best edge rushers that we have in the NFL. The next 2 awards, we're gonna wrap them up, but I'll give you the first one because I don't quite want to give away the second one yet. Best pass rusher is Cleveland Browns edge rusher Myles Garrett. Garrett led the league in PFF pass rush grade with a 92.8, led in total pressures with 83, led in pass rush win percentage with a 23.1, and he led in pressure rate with an 18.2. When you sweep all those statistics, guess what? You're the best pass rusher in the NFL. Myles Garrett continued to be an alien this year with how he was able to attack the pocket and attack offensive tackles. And this was now his 4th year in a row where he recorded at least 14 sacks. Never been done in NFL history. He's the only player to ever have 4 seasons in a row with 14-plus sacks in each of those seasons. So Myles Garrett continues to be unbelievable. And there's some rumors of depending where the Cleveland Browns are going to go with their franchise and the quarterback position. You know, could he be on the move? If a player of this caliber would be on the move, we'd be talking about one of the biggest difference-making available veterans that we've seen in a long, long time.
A defensive player that could change the power structure of the league is what he could do.
Yes.
And I think he's another guy on this list. For as much data and the mountain of information that we have at our disposal, you run out of things to say about him. I mean, you put Superman off the edge, and that's what Myles Garrett is. I mean, even in a year where the Browns, what did they win, 3 or 4 games this year? And he was still, when you play the Browns, you shake a little bit because you're like, 95's on the edge, and that could ruin the whole game. That's how good he is, no matter how – and that's the crazy thing. No matter how bad the team is around him or they can't cover, they can't do this or that, he could single-handedly win a ball game. He could disrupt your whole game plan. He's just everything you could possibly want in a defensive end. I mean, another future Hall of Famer on this list. We've got several of them, but I honestly run out of things to say about him. I just watch his tape and shake my head.
And that is why he also wins Defensive Player of the Year here for us at PFF. After shattering records with his 94.8 PFF pass rush grade in 2023, he delivered in another incredible performance in 2024 with a 92.8 pass rush grade that we already kind of referenced there. So it's some of the sustained top-tier play, but it's also just a recognition of how good that guy is and how big of a difference maker he is. And again, when you go against the Cleveland Browns, they didn't have a very good season. You know, you knew that they probably weren't going to be very good on offense, but they still had one player on defense who could absolutely wreck the game for you. And I think that he did in a lot of categories. It's just it wasn't enough there for that team. So Cleveland Brown fans, I didn't mean to recognize Myles Garrett for this award and then bring you down talking about trade speculation here for Myles Garrett, but got to build around this guy. I mean, this guy's got to be around a winner. He's too damn talented for all of this, and I know Browns fans will be the first to be able to tell you that, but our Defensive Player of the Year and somebody who we could have and have given this award to before, he's been masterful, and he's one of the best football players on the planet.
There's only one thing I'm left wondering here with both of these awards. Boy, what if we got a full season out of Aiden Hutchinson?
Yeah.
He started the year, the first 5-6 games with a 38% pass rush win,
which is just out of this world.
If you're at 25, you're out of this world. He was at 38. I just wonder where we would be with this and where we'd be on the Lions too, especially if Aiden Hutchinson hadn't suffered that injury. And we may still see him again if the Lions make the Super Bowl, but he was in for a historic year as well, and hopefully he can recover from that injury and do things like that in the future, because he was off to an incredible start this year.
I think this encapsulates some of the dominance that Myles Garrett has had, not just this year, but throughout the course of his career. This is the highest graded seasons at PFF for an edge rusher since 2006, which is the start of the PFF era. Number one was Myles Garrett last year. Then it was Robert Quinn from 2013, Von Miller from 2012. Then it was Myles Garrett from 2 years ago. Then it was Nick Bosa from last year, Micah Parsons from last year, and then it was Myles Garrett from this year. So if you are looking
1, 4, and 7, is that what I got there?
You are looking at the number 1, the number 4, and the number 7 grades.
That's fair.
Over the last 3 years, he has 3 of the top 7 edge rush grades in a single season that we have seen. Unbelievable football player. Shout out to Myles Garrett, who wins our Defensive Player of the Year. If you guys haven't played DraftKings yet from Pick 6, what are you doing? Playoffs are here. You got to get in on it. Time's running out as the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. DraftKings does fantasy sports like no one else. You can play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's very easy to do. You select 2 or more players. Choose if they will have more or less of a single stat like touchdowns, yards, sacks, tackle, whatever it is. All the different stats that they have up there. Just choose more or less for 2 or more players. It's available in most states, Missouri, California, Texas, so many more. And if you've never played before, new Pick 6 customers, you bet just $5 on any Pick 6 set that you have, and you get $50 in Pick 6 credits right there. Win or lose, doesn't matter. There's a lot of great matchups that are obviously coming up in the playoffs. I think about that Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills game. You know, James Cook's going off 100 yards last game. If you think that's going to happen again, I'm sure that you can look at that line. Derrick Henry on the other side of things, if you think he's going to rush for over 100 yards again. If you think it's just going to be a run fest between those two teams, maybe compare that right there. James Cook and Derrick Henry, over 100 rushing yards. You know, we'll get into, when we get into the preview show, what we think is going to happen for those two teams, but that's just an example. You can win more cash on Pick 6. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF to play just $5, and you get $50 right there in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 is not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonuses awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire within 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. To the offensive side of the ball we go. Best runner. I think there are some good debates at the very top of this one. Ultimately, the winner of PFF's Best Runner Award, Baltimore Ravens running back Derrick Henry. We'll get into it. We're getting into the debates here between him and Saquon Barkley, who also had a phenomenal season. And I'll just start by saying this. Henry beat out Saquon Barkley in yards after contact per attempt, missed tackles forced per attempt, and PFF rushing grade among other categories as well. But those are three that we look at very heavily when we try to take your running back's performance and separate it from maybe the offensive line that they're running behind or the volume of statistics that they get. It really individualizes how well these running backs have played this season. And Derrick Henry, when you look at all those numbers, he was the best runner that we had this season.
Just unstoppable still at his age, and I think he's breaking all the rules right now. And you got to remember, everyone's going to go, well, okay, Saquon had 2,000 yards. Derrick Henry had 1,920, and he had 20 less carries than Saquon did, right? So I think you're talking about, had he gotten 20 more carries at that same clip, would have had more yards than Barkley. And
right.
The other thing with Henry for me is, I'll be honest, I was a doubter on him going to Baltimore. Not so much that he couldn't play well, but as far as him improving their Super Bowl chances, they sure look like a Super Bowl contender with them back there. Him and Jackson are just unstoppable in the backfield. And the other thing I want to mention, too, the Eagles' 5th in run blocking grade in the league. Baltimore 17th, doing a little bit more, even with less, and breaking those tackles like you mentioned. He's just, as you could argue, this was his best season out of all of them. And he's had so many great seasons. Another guy in this list, future Hall of Famer. He's just... he's another one. It's just a freak of nature.
Yep.
I don't even know at this point. He's like Superman playing running back instead of like Myles Garrett playing defensive end. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean he was phenomenal all season long, and I know a lot of people are going to vote for Barkley here, and Barkley's probably going to get a lot of those awards for a reason. But like you said, the volume statistics were there in favor of Saquon Barkley, and he even had the better offensive line that he was running between. Now, that's not to take anything away from him. I mean, these are two phenomenal players in the NFL. So I think that sometimes we have these debates at the very top, and obviously it's one award. You give it to one or the other, and people just think that you're like, oh, like how could you not give it to this guy? It's not like we think he's trash. What we're trying to do, and the whole point of PFF is to contextualize some of these performances here. Of course, I said at the very top of the show, you can see these numbers for yourself. You can do the math yourself if you have a PFF Plus subscription, which you should go do. Because it's things like this that are where I think a PFF subscription and these PFF numbers really shine. Is you don't just have to look at the guy who had the most carries behind a great offensive line. Saquon still performed incredibly well. You still have to be very talented to get up to those numbers. But a lot of the efficiency numbers favor Derrick Henry, and that's why Derrick Henry ends up winning this award as best runner here in 2024. Best receiver. So now we go to the wide receivers. It's wide receiver Ja'Marr Chase. Hard not to give it to him, right? Triple Crown winner here for the Cincinnati Bengals, but it's more than just that. Ja'Marr Chase, I will recognize, just coming off of the heels of sort of talking about Saquon Barkley getting a lot of volume, Ja'Marr Chase had a ton of volume because like we talked about with Joe Burrow, they were down a lot in these games. He's Joe Burrow's go-to target. So leading in receiving touchdowns, leading in receiving yards, leading in receptions. A lot of that is situational, but you don't want to totally take away the talent of what we saw for those volume statistics, and then you can go into it a little bit more. If you look at the red zone, Chase was number 1 in the league in red zone targets at 36, but he caught 22 passes, 8 touchdowns, 14 first downs. Both of those were second most in the NFL. Targeted 37 times on late downs, so on 3rd and 4th down. Converted 18 of those 23 catches that he had on 3rd and 4th down situations. 85.3 receiving grade in the second half of games, which is tied for 5th. So obviously when it was coming down to the biggest moments, 62 passes for 944 yards in those situations in the second half. And he was the only receiver to record double-digit touchdowns in the second half when games mattered most. So yes, a lot of volume is going towards Ja'Marr Chase, and I'll talk about a couple receivers that I also think were up there for this award. But ultimately, yes, he had the volume, but he also played incredibly well in Ja'Marr Chase.
Yeah, no, I mean, incredibly efficient anyway, right? 7th in the league in yards per route run. I think missed tackles force, another thing we keep track of for receivers, 2nd most in the league behind Garrett Wilson. And his receiving grade's 84.9. That sits at 12th among wide receivers, but that's mostly because he had 10 drops on the year, and we ding you pretty good for drops. I mean, you take out that, and honestly, he was the best receiver in football this year, especially when you consider, again, the Bengals and all their other weaknesses and all of their other deficiencies, and even the scheme is not all that complex. They just pretty much line up and throw the football, and everyone knows they're going to do it. It's hard to get open consistently when everyone in the stadium knows you're throwing the football. So Chase, just an amazing year. Him and Burrow just, I mean, they kept this Bengals team alive for as long as they could, right, along with T. Higgins, and just what he did this season, I'll tell you what, maybe the Bengals should have signed him and just paid him his money a little bit sooner, because now he's going to be the highest paid receiver in football after this year.
The one player that I think probably has the strongest debate now, like Nico Collins had a fantastic year. He missed a little bit of time, so obviously the volume statistics aren't going to match up against Chase. But Nico Collins from the Houston Texans, 91.6 receiving grade. I thought he was fantastic. A.J. Brown, a little hot and cold sort of down the stretch of the season, but 91.6 as well this year. He was absolutely dominant. But really, like, the guy that I think has the best case, if you're not giving it to Jamar Chase, is Puka Nacua from the Rams. So Nacua missed 5 games due to injury, so his numbers stacked up with Chase aren't really like the common statistics. Again, the receiving yards, the receptions, all that. They're not going to match Chase's no matter what. But Nacua did have the highest receiving grade of any wide receiver this season at a 93.0. I mean, he was incredible this year. Nacua had a 37.4 threat percentage, so how often he was out there and running routes, Matthew Stafford was going to him plenty. So to me, if there is a debate, I think it's probably between those two guys. To me, it is very tight. Ultimately, we as a staff went with Jamar Chase here for the best receiver. It's hard to totally argue that, but if you had to debate one way or the other, I feel like Nacua would have been my choice to go head-to-head with Chase in a couple of different categories.
3.56 yards per route run.
For Nacua?
Yeah. Which is just, if you're at 3, you're doing crazy, elite, dominant stuff, and he's at over 3.5, which usually only see out of college receivers when they're dominating certain levels of competition. That to have a 3.56 for his whole season in the NFL, or as much as he played this season, that's just incredible. No question, had he played all 17 games, we would have a lot hotter debate about this, because Nacua, you're right, he's fantastic, and of course he continues to be fantastic for the Rams through the playoffs.
Best pass blocker, going to the offensive line now. Couple of really tough debates here with best pass blocker, best run blocker, best offensive lineman overall. Those are 3 of the awards that were given here along the offensive line. Ultimately, the winner of the 2024 best pass blocker from PFF is Tampa Bay Buccaneers left tackle Tristan Wirfs. This season, Wirfs surrendered a pressure percentage on just 1.9% of his passing plays, the best amongst all offensive tackles in the NFL. Did not allow a single sack all season long that was credited solely against him, making him only the second left tackle in the past 5 seasons with more than 500 pass blocking snaps to not allow a single sack. All this added up to a 93.7 PFF pass blocking grade in 2024, which is not only the league's best mark this season, but it was the highest mark of the 828 offensive linemen who have played at least 300 snaps over the past 5 years. So it wasn't just like, hey, Tristan Wirfs, good job, you beat everybody out this year. This is one of the cleanest pass blocking players that we have seen over the last 5 years. And so Tristan Wirfs is fantastic.
I don't know that there's a more consistent player in football than Tristan Wirfs, and I think it's amazing too. He's the first player ever to be an All-Pro at both tackle spots. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean, that's just incredible. I remember 2 years ago thinking about, okay, this is kind of a big deal. He's moving over to the left side. Donovan Smith is gone. I remember Wirfs saying himself he had to see like a sports psychologist about this, about switching sides and how much anxiety it was putting on him when he first did it. And then he gets on the field and it just doesn't matter. He's one of the best tackles in football. Another guy, I think through 5 years we sit here and look at, he could very well be on a Hall of Fame track. And he is as big a reason, first of all, that the Bucs won that Super Bowl with Tom Brady. You know, he's as big a reason as they won that one as anybody on that team. And he continues to be one of the most, if not the most, maybe arguably the most valuable player on their team. They just keep it rolling on offense, in part because they've got a lockdown left tackle. It used to be right tackle. Now they've got a lockdown left tackle. And while they build the rest of that offensive line, they have absolutely nothing to worry about with Tristan Wirfs on that left side.
I think it was a big debate between him and Lane Johnson, in my opinion, for the best pass blocker that we had in this award, because Lane himself did not give up a sack this season. Only 10 pressures allowed, 2.2 pressure percentage allowed. So again, he's right there with Wirfs. I mean, the pressure percentage is just barely higher, but he went up against some good edge rushers just like Tristan Wirfs did. And so Lane Johnson, to me, was the other one there that I think deserves a shout-out, who is really in heavy consideration for best pass blocker. I don't know if was there anybody else that was. I think Zach Tom had a great year as a pass blocker for sure, but I still would have put these two guys over Zach Tom. But what do you think?
Teron Armstead, when he's healthy, is always up there.
When he's healthy, for sure.
Enough games, I think that's another guy that sticks out to me in the impact he has on the Dolphins too.
And his teammate, I think Philadelphia Eagles teammate, Lane Johnson's teammate here, Jordan Mailata. He ends up winning Best Run Blocker here for the 2024 season. The left tackle earned a positively graded run blocking play on 20% of those plays, which ranks 6th amongst all offensive linemen, and also led all offensive tackles. So when I say that it's 6, obviously that's including offensive guards, centers as well, but that number was the highest percentage of positively graded run blocking plays from the offensive tackle position. 94.9 run blocking grade this year, which not only led all offensive linemen in 2024, but also trailed only Trent Williams' very special and historic 2021 season, among the best that we have seen over the last 5 years from Jordan Mailata. So Mailata missed a little bit of time. He was 4 games right around that middle of the season, so he did miss those 4 games, but the run blocking dominance from him as an offensive tackle, I think, him, Penei Sewell, those are the guys that really come to mind as these dominant run blocking offensive tackles. But I'd shout out Chris Miners as well. I just combined the 2 names that I was going to bring up. Quinn Miners, offensive guard for the Denver Broncos, who had a phenomenal season as a run blocker, and then Chris Lindstrom, the offensive guard from the Atlanta Falcons. I think anytime you're talking about run blocking, those 2 guys got to be in the conversation as well. So really it was a debate, in my opinion, between those 4, but Mailata's overall run blocking grade of a 94.9. Hard to not give him this award.
I think another guy to shout out at center here is Creed Humphrey.
Every year.
I mean, just incredible again. But no, Mailata has played, including their playoff game against the Packers, played 13 games this year so far, graded above an 80 in 9 of them. It's just ridiculous. It's every single week he dominates. And when he has been on the field, the Eagles have they've been arguably the best offensive line in football. I mean, so there's a couple others with some good debates. Atlanta, like you mentioned, Detroit's got a great one, but Mailata's impact at that left spot, especially when you consider what Saquon Barkley's done, you have to recognize what Mailata and those guys have done up front.
And that brings us into best offensive lineman in the NFL this season, and we are giving it to Jordan Mailata, the best overall offensive lineman. So obviously the winner of the run blocker of the year, now winner of the overall offensive lineman of the year. 90-plus grades as both a run blocker and a pass blocker. Now, again, he missed the middle part of the season, so there were a couple of really tough assignments. Micah Parsons was in there as one of them that he missed, and so he doesn't have the Micah Parsons game that might have brought down the averages. But hey, maybe they wouldn't have. Maybe he would have been able to stand up very well against Micah Parsons. But he topped the charts in PFF's win above replacement metric for an offensive tackle. He was he was 3rd total in that regard from Lane Johnson and from Penei Sewell. He has played fantastic all season long when he has been out there. So Jordan Mailata, winner of offensive lineman of the year.
Yeah, and honestly, what a story of player development too, right? Former rugby player, and then they just bring him along. Like, he's talented, he's athletic, let's put him at tackle and see where it goes. And he's been an elite player all 5 years in the league.
Yeah. I was reading that wrong. I thought I was reading that wrong when I was saying it. Mailata was the top wins above replacement guy, and then 2nd was Penei Sewell, 3rd was Lane Johnson. So that's how we stack them up. And so winning that wins above replacement number obviously helps out Jordan Mailata there, getting a 90-plus grade in both run blocking and pass blocking. That'll pretty much do it for you. The New Year's, it's time for resolutions, right? But instead of something that you might forget in the first couple of weeks, as we're in the middle of January now, what about a resolution to invest in your kids' financial future? That's never going to fade. You know that. With a kids' investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life, your investments will keep growing long after New Year's resolutions typically fade, giving your kids a solid start towards a great financial future. And you can do that right now. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With the kids' investment account for Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Whole thing is online and very easy to set up. Could take you as little as 5 minutes. Then you just manage your child's account right from your phone, monitor their investments right there, and you can see exactly what their progress is. Can't invest, while they're minors, but you can invest in a kid's account for them on their behalf to give their investments a little bit more time to grow. Funds, they can be used for basically anything. When they're kids, it's summer camps, it's music lessons, it's things with sports, like whatever it is. But then when they're young adults, if you want to use it then, a first car, a first house, starting a business, whatever it is, the benefits are basically endless when you're able to get a head start like this. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL, meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. You can learn more at meetfabric, meetfabric.com. All right, getting to some of the heavy hitter awards. Well, we got one more offensive line award that we're going to give, and then we'll get into Offensive Player of the Year, MVP, and then the Dwight Stevenson Award, which we said at the top of the show, goes to PFF's just overall best offensive player, not offensive player, just best player that we saw in the NFL this season, beyond the shackles of what sometimes is, the word valuable in the MVP award. But best offensive line, we got to cap off the offensive line talk by giving that to the Philadelphia Eagles. And how do you not, right? You talk about the interior offensive line, which I think is very stout for them. I mean, not often you can lose a guy like Jason Kelce and still stay as stout as the Philadelphia Eagles have been. But when you have two of the top three wins above replacement offensive tackles in the league in Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, you're probably going to win this one. Weeks 11 through 17, Eagles surrendered only 41 pressures, including just 3 sacks on 205 passing plays allowed. 89.3 PFF pass blocking efficiency rating. In terms of PFF's overall grades, you had Jordan Mailata in a 96.1, Lane Johnson in an 85.4. They were top 10 at their position. And then Dickerson, Mekhi Becton, who could have talked about Mekhi Becton as maybe a breakout player because of how well he's been playing at guard for them. Both of them were among top 20. So you had 2 top 10 offensive tackles, top 5 offensive tackles, honestly, and then 2 top 20 guards. Anytime that's the case along the same offensive line, you're probably going to win this award. So best offensive line from PFF goes to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Couple things to note here. I do think there's some good candidates when you talk about, say, in Atlanta or Detroit, but I want to talk about all 5 of those guys for a second. Think about it this way, not just the big money guys and the 2 tackles. Mailata, first at left tackle, highest graded left tackle. Landon Dickerson, 3rd highest graded left guard. Cam Jurgens is the lowest ranked one. He's the 11th best center. Mekhi Becton, the 9th best right guard, and Lane Johnson, the 3rd best right tackle. All 5 guys in the top 11 at their position in the regular season. And this was the only offensive line. If I take out Week 18, because the backups all played Week 18, Weeks 1 through 17, the only offensive line in the top 5 of both run blocking grade and pass blocking grade. Just when I almost gave it away earlier on accident, but when Mailata's been healthy and it's been these 5 guys, they've been the best offensive line in football. It's not really any question. The grades are dragged down again a little bit by the backups in Week 18 and 4 weeks where Mailata didn't play, but this front 5 is, along with their defense, I think the biggest reason that they could go on a Super Bowl run.
We already talked about best passer. We gave it to Joe Burrow. We were talking about Joe Burrow as a comeback player of the year, so we also talked about him with best passer, which means that we have 3 awards left. We have offensive player of the year, we have MVP, and we have the Dwight Stevenson award. Offensive player of the year, we will start with that one. It goes to Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. Lamar, unbelievable season, coming off the heels of an MVP year in 2023. I got a pretty strong case for him to win MVP this season as well. But when it comes to Offensive Player of the Year, so you're looking at everything as a whole, not just him as a passer, but just him as an overall offensive weapon. 37 rushes of 10 or more yards, tied for the 3rd most in the NFL, matching Detroit's Jahmyr Gibbs and trailing only Philly's Saquon Barkley. And obviously we talked about his teammate as well, Derrick Henry. So when you are 3rd in 10-plus rushing yard plays as a quarterback, that takes what you're already doing as a passer to the next level. And why I think there's a lot of debates of like who could win Offensive Player of the Year. Jamar Chase winning the Triple Crown, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry for what they have done on the ground. You talk about, okay, well, is it maybe one of those offensive linemen? Jordan Mailata was so dominant, right? But when you think of, all right, well, offensive player, it's just supposed to be somebody who brings the most to the offensive side of the ball. How do you not give it to Jackson? With how great of a passer he was this season. Joe Burrow barely had a better passing grade than Lamar Jackson. So Lamar was right there almost winning best passer. And he's also the best rushing quarterback that we have in the NFL. So it's like he's right there with Joe Burrow as the best passer. He's right there with Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen with like the best runner at quarterback, but he's in both conversations. So to me, at an elite level there, he's got to win Offensive Player of the Year. So Lamar winning OPA.
Obviously leading the league in PFF grade with a 94. When you lead all quarterbacks in yards per attempt, turnover-worthy play rate, and explosive runs, there isn't really an answer to stopping him at this point. He's redefined dual threat, and he does both as well as anyone we've ever seen. I mean, the honest answer to stopping Lamar Jackson is just hope he's off that day. We've hit that point where it's just there's not a concrete answer anymore, and He walks. There are games, we've mentioned it, there's 6 or 7 games this year where he just walked on the football field and it was over before it even started. That's how good he's been.
Which brings us right into the winner of MVP, which is also Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. We're giving it to Lamar here to win back-to-back MVPs. He had a phenomenal season last year. Dalton, this year is even better from him. We've already talked about some of the rushing numbers there, but 92.6 passing grade, narrowly missed the league's leader in Joe Burrow. So he was right there with Joe Burrow. And that's also the 12th best single-season mark since PFF began tracking the data. So not only is it almost right there with Joe Burrow, but, this is also a historic season. So you can't just say, it was second best in the league this year. It was 12th best since we have tracked this since 2006. So 8.8 yards per attempt, highest in the NFL. Also had 30 big-time throws compared to just 7 turnover-worthy plays. You talk about a guy who is bringing value to his team. It is not just the ceiling of how high he elevates this offense. It is also the floor. I think for a long time, the discussion with Lamar Jackson was always he's too high variance of a quarterback. Yeah, he could do great things for you, but also he could crumble. That doesn't exist anymore. Anybody who's trying to tell you that is who Lamar Jackson is hanging on to them doubting him when they had pre-draft priors. That's it. Especially over the last 2 years. The high football IQ that this guy plays with. To be able to see and make the biggest plays almost every single game, but also just how he elevates this team and there is no crumbling under pressure. There is no floor with this player that is below what you would need to win a football game. Every single time that Lamar Jackson steps out onto that field, you have a chance to beat any opponent that you're going up against, no matter who is hurt on his team, no matter what the offensive line looks like, no matter what his supporting cast is. 3.90 wins above replacement metric this year. Incredibly high from him. So as a runner, as a passer, and somebody who just raises the floor to an extremely high level while also raising the ceiling, it is why Lamar Jackson wins our most valuable player of the year.
I think a big thing for me is that he did used to be, because this under Greg Roman was obvious, it's going to be run heavy when you have Lamar Jackson. You're going to run a good amount, especially when you have Derrick Henry too, but being able to throw without play action, the true just drop back passing game, right? His previous career high, a non-play action passing grade, was 78.1. He did that. That was his first MVP year. Todd Monken comes back in last year, and he's at a 78 last year, which was his second best. A lot of other years were in the 60s. This year, without play action, 91.8 passing grade. He's filled in the one gap that there was throwing without play action, just taking a 3 to 5 step drop and reading the field and slinging the ball where it needs to be. And that's what he's done. 24 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays without play action this year. The fact that the Ravens now have a true drop-back passing game and Lamar's hit this level with it, again, it's made this offense unstoppable. It was the one dimension that was missing.
Which takes us into our final award of the day, the Dwight Stevenson Award, which is supposed to, like I've said all show, take away any limitations of, you're using the word valuable or something like that. You bring in some value into the equation, because I think a lot of people hate MVP because they go, it has to go to a quarterback because you're using the words most valuable, and quarterback is the most valuable position in the sport. So the Dwight Stevenson Award is a PFF award that we kind of created to just really say who is the best player in the NFL. Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. It was. He's clean sweeping all of this. He's winning offensive player of the year because of how dynamic he is as a runner and a passer. He's winning most valuable because of how high he raises the floor and the ceiling of any team that he is playing for, no matter who is in and out of the lineup with injuries. And he wins the Dwight Stevenson Award just because of how historic this year was. When you look at highest PFF grades by quarterback since 2006. Number 1 on the list is Tom Brady from 2016. Number 2 on the list is Tom Brady from 2007. Number 3 is Peyton Manning from 2007. Number 4 is Drew Brees from 2018. Number 5 is Aaron Rodgers from his MVP 2020 season. And number 6 is Lamar Jackson from this year. He simply put, this is one of the best quarterback years that we've ever seen, that we've ever charted since 2006. Since the PFF era began, this is one of the best years that we have seen from any quarterback. And those other names, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Hall of Famers. I mean, it's not a question with how Lamar is playing.
Oh, no, yeah, no, it's not.
It is just not a question.
He could walk into the Hall of Fame tomorrow.
And at this point, you're just hoping he gets one ring. but he could very well get multiple because of how well he is playing and the caliber of quarterback he is. So even though the spirit of all of these awards are to kind of set them up where we give people a chance to where, like, okay, it doesn't have to be a quarterback for MVP, doesn't have to be a quarterback for Dwight Stevenson, like, it doesn't have to be all these things. It is very hard to not have Lamar clean sweeping these awards for how unbelievable his play is.
When you look at, think of it this way, at any position, offense or defense, the only two players this year with a higher grade than him that played at least 300 snaps, Jordan Mailata, who missed a handful of games, against
some of the best passers that he had on the season.
And the guy standing next to him in the backfield, Derrick Henry. Which is just, again, it's just silly. You think about, so now you think about, you have the two best skill players in the NFL standing next to each other in the backfield, running read options on any given play. It really, I wasn't sure that this would hit a level where it's actually just not fair. Boy, you almost feel like the league should have just outlawed Henry's contract and been like, no, that's actually not fair to have those two on the same team, and that's what we've hit, and those two guys are the reasons that they are, along with the improving defense and everything else, obviously. But you look at those two being the first two reasons that the Ravens are Super Bowl contenders, and Lamar's they're just two of the greatest freaks of nature we've ever seen. In the NFL.
Yep, and I think that it's look. I am all for giving Lamar Jackson this award. It feels weird that we did not give an award here to Josh Allen, given the year that he has had, rightfully in the MVP debate when it comes to the actual MVP award the NFL is going to give out. I think Josh Allen is right there. It's been an unbelievable season for the Buffalo Bills in his chemistry with Joe Brady and how he's playing this season. 37 big-time throws, ties Joe Burrow for the top or for the most in the league. But, you know, when you look at some of the turnover-worthy plays that he has had, 2.6 turnover-worthy play percentage compared to, 1.9 from Joe Burrow, a 1.4 from Lamar Jackson. And so it's just like, again, it feels weird not giving Josh Allen any of these awards. But in all of these categories, it's like, okay, well, Joe Burrow was just a little bit better as a passer. Lamar was just a little bit more dynamic overall, a little bit higher of a floor than what Josh Allen had. And so I wanted to shout out Josh Allen because I think he absolutely deserves it. But when it comes to these awards, I think that we landed on the right ones winning these.
The stat that needs to be pointed out for Josh Allen, and there's still playoff games, but I don't think he's going to dip below it. Still pacing, and he's just been surging the whole second half of the year. Still pacing. He is currently the first quarterback in PFF history to have a 90 grade in 5 straight seasons.
Yeah,
there was a run. Tom Brady previously had 4 in the late, like 2015 to 18 or something like that. Brady had 4. Allen this year working on 5 and at a career high 92.5 grade. I would expect that he's not going to dip below 90. He's going to set a new record with 5 straight seasons at 90 plus by a quarterback.
If Josh Allen doesn't get MVP or any of the PFF awards, if he wins a ring, he'll be all right with it. I think he'll be all right.
The argument is what he did down the stretch and the fact that you don't think about the Bills as being as loaded offensively as the Ravens and the Bengals are, at least with the weaponry. They kind of have more of a depth of solid weapons, and Allen's at the center.
I hate using that against quarterbacks. I just hate that debate.
I think it's just different. They have a lot of solid weapons and the run schemes, and Joe Brady and James Cook's great in the backfield too. I mean, it's just a different way of going about it. And again, just about any other year, Allen would win it, and then you'd obviously get a good argument with the MVP if they would have made the playoffs,
right?
Which is obviously to no fault of Burrow, but no, I mean Allen. I think that's where it is. Is he's all of them. The value to their team is just so immense, and it's what you want out of a starting quarterback.
Shout out to all of our award winners here that we had on the 2024 PFF award show for the 2024 regular season. Well, I guess I got to say 2024, 2025 because we did bleed into 25 a little bit. Shout out to everybody who won awards on this show. We would love to hear from you guys who your award winners would have been for any of these categories. Doesn't have to be all of them. Shout them out in the comments. Best way to do that. And like I've said throughout the show, we talked about a lot of PFF statistics that we use to give these awards out to these certain players that have stood out in a lot of ways and a lot of metrics that we think are very valuable to the game of football. If you want to see those for yourself, head on over to PFF.com. Get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. That's the best way to do that. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying thank you guys so much for watching the 2024-2025 PFF Award Show. We'll see you guys next time.